May 28, 1936. Richard and Leota Bernhard Obrecht were blessed with the birth of their first child, Richard. He was born in Ashland and baptized at Trinity Lutheran Church. The couple welcomed Richard's younger brother, Dwayne, 2 years later and raised the boys in their home on West Liberty Street. Richard attended Grant Street School through the first grade. Then the family moved to Loudonville, where the Obrechts attended Zion Lutheran Church, where Richard was confirmed. Richard and Leota raised both of their boys with a strong work ethic. When they were young, Richard and Dwayne both had paper routes. They carried papers for the Columbus Dispatch, picking them up at the old hotel in Loudonville. 2 doors down from the hotel was the smokehouse, where the local men gathered and played pinball, pool, and cards. And the boys enjoyed watching the ticker tape and the big board where the baseball scores were updated. Dick eventually saved enough money from the paper route to buy his first bicycle. In his teen years, Dick worked as a bag boy at the Red and White Market in Loudonville. He also volunteered to sing in the church choir. After graduating from Loudonville High School in 1954, Dick attended Ohio University. He married his hometown sweetheart, Carol Stewart, in 1958, and they welcomed their son Jeff the following year. In 1960, Dick graduated from OU, and he and Carol welcomed their daughter Kathy that same year. The family moved to Novo, Ohio, where Dick began teaching at Ruggles-Troy High School. He then taught for a while at Mapleton High School and moved the family to Ashland. Daughter Kathy recalls that when she was young, she was convinced her dad knew literally everything. If she or her brother Jeff wondered about something, their mom would say, "Ask your dad, he'll know." And he usually did. If he didn't, he would come up with a good enough answer that convinced the 2 kids that he really did know everything. Kathy has since figured out that her dad doesn't know quite everything, but pretty darn close. In 1964, they moved to State College, Pennsylvania, while Dick attended graduate school at Penn State University, earning his Master's of Education in Guidance Counseling. Upon graduation from Penn State, the family returned to Ashland, where Dick began his career as head guidance counselor at Ashland High School. In 1969, he assumed the role as an academic counselor at Ashland College, then assistant registrar, and then head registrar. And after 30 years at Ashland University, Dick retired as registrar emeritus. Vicki Yoho started working with Dick Obrecht at AU in 1984. Vicki shares that she learned all the jobs in the registrar's office from Dick. This was before the university used computers. All the work was performed by hand. This meant that Dick spent every lunch hour in the conference room, eating the lunch that he had packed and evaluating student records. At graduation time, he read all the graduates' names for the ceremony. Vicki worked with Dick until he retired from Ashland University. She states that Dick never wanted attention for the work that he'd accomplished and describes Dick as a man of integrity and compassion and one of the finest men that she has ever known. After retirement, Dick began volunteering at Samaritan Hospital. In his 16 years as a volunteer, from 1999 to 2015, he has volunteered 8,695 hours. Since Samaritan started recognizing volunteers in 2005 for both their hours worked and their years worked, Dick has earned the top spot every year. Known to many as the face of Samaritan volunteers, Dick serves in multiple volunteer roles, including messenger, reception desk, and special service. He also serves on the auxiliary board as chairman of the Messenger Volunteers and has served as president in the past. As a volunteer trainer, Dick has trained nearly all of Samaritan's new volunteers who choose to serve as a reception desk volunteer or messenger volunteer. He is the most reliable of all volunteers, often taking additional shifts for others. He and his wife Carol, also a volunteer, have covered the front desk for Thanksgiving and Christmas Day. Dick has been a wonderful example to his family. Daughter Kathy Shelley also fills in as a volunteer at Samaritan when needed. Jill Hartson, Marketing and Volunteer Services Coordinator for Samaritan Hospital, describes Dick as an outstanding community leader and a wonderful testament of God's love through service. At a time when people are nervous and have much on their minds, Dick's helpfulness and calming nature serve as a beacon of peace for those walking through the doors at University Hospital's Samaritan Medical Center. Jill feels truly blessed and honored to work alongside Dick with the volunteer program, and she shares that Dick is the first person she calls when she needs advice or needs to hear a reassuring voice. She admires his commitment to serving others and is grateful that the community has a role model as gracious, humble, kind, and remarkable as Dick Obrecht. Alan Steiner, retired Samaritan Hospital senior manager and Dick's good friend, states that Samaritan Regional Health System is fortunate to have Dick as a volunteer. Alan describes Dick as the ultimate team player who makes everyone around him better for the tasks at hand. Chris Jacobs, executive assistant to the president of University Hospital's Samaritan Medical Center, added that because of Dick Obrecht, the hospital's Pacesetter campaign for the United Way of Ashland County starts out on the right foot. Dick is the first chapter in the campaign journey, and while there were many individuals involved who helped make this a seamless campaign, Dick spends several days every year tending to the meticulous job of individually labeling a 3-sheet pledge form for every employee. Dick is the go-to volunteer when you want a project completed precisely and in a timely manner. Chris Jacobs describes Dick as a gentleman who she is proud to be acquainted with. Dick's reputation for serving doesn't stop with Samaritan. For 47 years, he ran the clock at Ashland High School home football games, and for 45 years for the AU football team. Between the two teams, Dick ran the clock for a combined 475 games. He also kept the Ashland High School basketball scorebook for more than 30 years and did the numbers for Ashland College basketball during the Bill Musselman era. And that's not all. Dick has been in the Ashland Noon Lions Club for 50 years, serving as secretary for many of those years. He is an active member of Trinity Lutheran Church, serving on church council and the outreach committee. He has sung in the choir for almost 50 years and is currently the music librarian. He helps with Wednesday night dinners and the all-daughter banquet and has tended the Rose Garden for many years. Dick is involved with the Amateur Radio Emergency Service and serves on the Agape Board. He also serves as the community representative on the Samaritan Regional Health System Customer Service Committee. Pastor Sanford Mitchell, former pastor at Trinity Lutheran Church, shares one word to describe Dick: faithful. No matter the task, Dick did it faithfully. If Dick said he would do something, you never had to worry about it getting done or ask him again. During Pastor Mitchell's first week at Trinity, he attended the senior choir's practice on Wednesday night. He sat down in the bass section and struck up a conversation with Dick and another fellow, Jim Kaufman, a good friend of Dick's. They asked Pastor Mitchell what he liked to do, and he replied, "Fish." They asked, "Where do you go?" And Pastor Mitchell said, "Canada, at Georgian Bay on the French River." And they replied, "We do too." "Where on the French River?" Pastor Mitchell responded, "Atwood Island." Again they replied, "We do too." Pastor Mitchell went home that night and told his wife he had found his heavenly place. Stephen Krispinski, executive director of the MBA program at Ashland University, worked with Dick at AU for 20 years. Steve shares that Dick was always cordial and had the best interest of students in mind. He was fair, honest, respectful, and demonstrated integrity at all times. Steve describes Dick as a stable fixture in the registrar's office, and to his recollection, Dick never missed a day of work. He feels Dick truly deserves this recognition, describing Dick as a man of great faith who is respected by many who know him and have worked with him at AU, his church, and the hospital. Close friend Mark Rayfield believes that God puts people in our lives for a purpose. In a short period of time, Mark came to know and appreciate Dick's sense of humor, along with his attention to detail. Mark has grown to know Dick as a dedicated family man, a loyal sports fan for his beloved Indians, Ashland University Eagles, high school sports, and, of course, the Nittany Lions of Penn State. Mark Rayfield feels very lucky to have Dick Obrecht as a mentor, confidant, father figure, and friend. Fellow Coffee Club member Dave Kawaka describes Dick as intelligent, humorous, honest, and sincere, and shares that recently, at their 6 a.m. coffee meeting at the dairy bar, Dick accidentally knocked off his plate of French toast. The next morning, he was greeted with a plate duct-taped to his reserved place at the table. Ev Duvall, longtime friend, shares that he first met Dick more than 50 years ago. He was a rookie teacher at Ashland High School in 1967 when he first met guidance counselor Dick Obrecht. Ev shares that Dick was responsible for helping several hundred students and took on the additional guidance of one young, inexperienced new teacher. Ev states that Dick Obrecht has devoted his life to helping others, going about it in his special, behind-the-scenes kind of way. Dick's wife, Carol, shares that when she married the love of her life, she knew that he would be a wonderful husband and father. And when they lost their son, Jeff, and their grandson, Josh, in 2011, Dick was Carol's rock, her comforting and steady partner. He has always been there for his family. Daughter Kathy describes her dad as a man of few words, especially if it's an emotional moment. When Kathy got married, just before he walked his daughter down the aisle, Dick squeezed Kathy's elbow. She knew what that meant, and it said a lot more to her than any words could have said. Like her mother, Kathy sees her father as the rock of the family. Kathy has always looked up to him, and even though people wouldn't think of him as tall, she states that he has always been a giant to her. Kathy knows her brother felt the same way, and that he had a huge amount of respect for his dad. Dick is a wonderful grandpa. He has always been active in the lives of his grandchildren, Andy and Emily. Daughter Kathy shares that when they decided to home educate their children, her dad was very involved with what they were doing. Dick and Carol's son, Jeff, and his family lived in Kansas for several years, so they couldn't be as hands-on as they would have liked to have been with Jeff's boys, Josh and Jeremy. But when the family moved back to Columbus, Dick and Carol drove down whenever there was something important going on. They also took the boys with them on some of their travels, making treasured memories. Granddaughter Emily attests that her grandpa has always looked after her and has done so much to help her, including helping her get a job at Samaritan Hospital. When Emily was in culinary school and needed an externship to graduate, Dick checked with Samaritan to see if they needed anyone. They had never done that type of internship before, but decided to give it a try. They created a position for Emily, and, after her graduation, Samaritan offered her a job. Emily is very thankful that her grandpa was able to help her get the job as a cook in the cafeteria. Emily shares that she is also thankful that her grandpa is getting this award. She usually works this dinner, and now is able to attend as a guest. Grandson Andy shares that his grandpa was a geek before it was cool to be a geek. In the pre-internet world, there was ham radio, and his grandpa used his radio to talk to people from all over the world. While to young Andy, it seemed like his grandpa was just repeating N8CIJ into a microphone. Andy now realizes that there was much more to it than that. When computers became affordable, Andy's grandpa was the first person Andy knew who had one. It didn't even have a mouse. All the commands had to be typed, and Andy shares that he still uses many of those commands today. Andy credits his grandpa for sparking in him a love of technology which still exists today and has shaped the course of Andy's career in IT. According to grandson Jeremy, his grandpa has always shown what it means to be a family man, someone who is patient, even-keeled, never getting overly worked up about anything, someone who gets up in the 5 o'clock hour every day, no matter what, so that he doesn't waste a minute of his day, someone who always fits in time to have breakfast with friends, someone who Jeremy stole his style from, simple and timeless, someone who keeps his family as the center of his life, even if he stays busy getting involved in as much activity as he can, and above all else, someone who works extremely hard, even in retirement.
Try to think that love's not around. Still it's uncomfortably near. My old heart ain't gaining no ground, because my angel eyes ain't here. Angel eyes that old devil sent, they glow unbearably bright. Need I say that my love's misspent with angel eyes tonight?
Dick Obrecht, for a lifetime of giving back of your time and many talents to the Ashland County community, your family, and your friends through countless hours of service. It is an honor to present you with Samaritan Hospital Foundation's 2016 Heart of Giving Award.